discussing specifically gifted math students. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our goals for our webinar are to talk about how we can transform these amazing units from what we traditionally know as paper and pencil into a virtual world, while still maintaining the rigor, the communication, student collaboration, and student engagement. Our second goal for our webinar is to support you in your quest of distance learning. We have some Flourish updates that we want to go over. Flourish is Kendall Hunt's online platform, and we've also aligned virtual manipulatives to all of the M-cubed units. This webinar is not about tools. Each of us have access to different platforms and different tools and technology. What we're going to be doing today is reimagining this content. What does this look like when we transform it to an online platform? My name is Shirley Fortenbaugh, and I am a Kendall Hunt consultant. I'm also a gifted specialist in Loudoun County Public Schools. I work with all students K through 5. Loudoun County is about an hour outside Washington, D.C., so I am in the Northern Virginia area. I have an undergraduate degree in elementary education. And after a few years of teaching, I realized my passion was working with gifted students. So I went to New York and I pursued my master's at Teachers College Columbia. After that, I realized I had a dual passion for math education. So I have been working on my second master's in math education at George Mason University, and I'm finishing up this year. George Mason University is one of the world's leading researchers in digital teaching mathematics online. And I'm so lucky that I have such amazing professors. I will be using a lot of the tools that I have learned, and even some of the templates that some of our professors like Dr. Teresa Wills have provided. I've taught these units for about 15 years in whole group, small group, mixed ability, exclusively gifted. I've even taught teachers how to use them as a math coach. Now, just like you, I have to learn how to teach these in a digital world. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Joining us today are Kendall Hunt's gifted and talented sales team. All of these ladies are available to assist or help you if you have any questions about using these units or ordering these units. This webinar is being recorded, so you're going to want to check your email for 2 links, the webinar and then the presentation. So the presentation will come in a separate link because there are lots of hyperlinks that you'll want to access. Today we have 2 features that we want to engage with. First of all, the chat box, which most of you are probably familiar with. So excited to have you here, Kimberly. Good afternoon, Lori. So you know how the chat box works. Please just ask questions, talk with us, talk with each other. The Q&A today, if you have a more specific question, if you want a training or if you want to contact any of our sales team, that would be for the Q&A box, because we can respond to you via email with the Q&A. The chat box can move fast and we don't want to miss any of your questions. So speaking of the chat box, please share what you teach and where you teach. Let's get to know each other a little bit. Western PA, hi Susan. Hi Belinda. Gifted support. Oh, Kimberly, I'm from Tampa. I live right by Laurie Park Zoo. We have directors. Wow, welcome everyone. Awesome. Oh my goodness. It is so nice that you're all here, and we have a wide range of positions in support services, and I'm glad that we have each other to talk about transitioning these units into an online platform. Also in the chat box, since you are already there, on a scale of 0 to 5, could you rate your level of experience with M-cubed units? 0 would be brand new, you've never seen it before, or maybe your district purchased them and you just haven't used them yet. And 5 would be expert. Okay, wonderful. We have a lot of experts. Awesome, just purchased. Oh, I love the zero 0.5. Well, welcome everyone. First, I want to go over the updates to Flourish. If you have these units, it is very likely you have a Flourish account. If you don't have a Flourish account, you probably want to contact one of the sales representatives to see how you can get one. We have updated the student journals. Those come in print form, and your district can also purchase them in a digital form. Next, we have our teacher resources. These are all your assessments, which are digital right there for you. We have the checkups, which are just little quizzes, unit assessments, which we like to use as pre and post assessments. And there's even a Common Core aligned, more detailed assessment in there. Next, over here, we have the teacher guide ebooks. Here are all of the books that your district will have purchased. And finally, down below, we have the interactive activities. I will go through what the interactive activities look like at the end of the webinar. So since this webinar is focusing on gifted math students, in that chat box again, let's brainstorm. What are some unique characteristics of a gifted math student? Yes, Christine, we'll give you an access to this. Digging deeper, perfectionism, absolutely. Easily bored. They are quick, aren't they? Fewer repetitions for mastery, absolutely. That's right, Tracy, productive struggle can be a challenge. And Julia, I agree, they have a unique perspective. They can see things that other people don't. Curious about connections, right? So knowing all of this, we also understand best practices of math education. They align perfectly to best practices of gifted education. When we look at what we want from math education, we want to provide students with rich tasks. Low level, low floor, high ceiling, open-ended. We want kids to have multiple entry points, and we want to provide that productive struggle. We have to know our students in order to make sure it's right in that area where they are going to grapple with it a little bit. We want to provide a task that allows for multiple representations, real-world connections, collaboration, and discussion. Then when you look at the world of gifted education, we always say our best practices are we want students to apply the methods by acting professionals. So we need students to act and behave like mathematicians. We want that metacognitive reasoning, creativity. We don't just want problem solving for our gifted students. We want problem posing. We want to push them down the spectrum of being creators of new mathematics. And finally, we want to do this through an inquiry-based approach. So best practices of math education really encompass best practices of gifted education. And that's what Project M Cubed is all about, is getting to the heart of what's best for gifted students and what's best in math education. There is actually quite a bit of research out there on virtual teaching. One of the research components actually says that virtual classrooms are uniquely situated to serve the needs of gifted students. In the chat box, please write why you think that could be. Why would a virtual classroom meet the needs of gifted students? That's right, individual pacing, personalization. Some do prefer to work alone, Michelle, absolutely. Yes, and linked below when you get this presentation is the NAGC article talking about the benefits of virtual learning for gifted students. We also know from research that an online math class without social interaction will not provide the same learning opportunities as if we were in the classroom. So we know we must integrate social interaction. If we limit that interaction, we can actually create fear and anxiety in our students. So even though we're in a virtual world and we're all sitting in different places around the country, we have to create interaction. We have to create collaboration. So we as teachers are tasked with building this active learning environment where we're simultaneously teaching the content while integrating the process standards. We can do this by collaboration, and we have to intentionally design collaborative learning opportunities into our virtual environments. And I'm going to show you a little example of what that looks like today. Each M-cubed unit is set up in 3 phases: planning phase, teaching phase, and the assessment phase. Well, today in our short time, I will focus on the teaching phase. If you have a regular teacher's edition print copy, you'll notice that each lesson has the 4 phases set up, and they are initiate, investigate, communicate, and think beyond. If you have the digital version, you'll see that on Flourish. Let's talk about phase 1, initiate. This is an introductory learning experience, and we want to engage the students with a specific skill. This translates really nicely to whole group synchronous learning. I know each of our districts are probably doing something different. My district has chosen hybrid and or 100% distance learning. So I wrote synchronous live as in if you are a DL teacher, this would be something great with your whole class, or maybe it's the Tuesday that you're with your class in school. This skill can also be taught in an asynchronous environment. For example, perhaps through a hybrid doc. You could even flip it. You could make a video of yourself teaching the skill. Here's a little example. I'm going to use a lesson from Treasures from the Attic, which is one of my favorite books. It's about exploring fractions in level 4 or 5. So in Frolicking Frogs, in the beginning, our objective is that students will find equivalent names for fractions greater than 1. And all of these lessons are based on discovery and inquiry. We're not going to tell students algorithms. We're going to let them discover, and we're going to let them grapple with understanding. So here's an example of an introductory activity that might work in a whole group environment. So we're talking about going to the state fair and having some frog jumping, and this is Daddy Longlegs. He jumped 1 1/3 feet. How could you mark the jump on this line if the only thing you know is that the line is 3 feet long? Now, obviously, here our objective is that students begin partitioning. Maybe we ask students to bring 3 feet of wrapping paper to the lesson, or maybe we do this virtually where they put lines on the screen. Either way, we want students to understand fractions need equal partitioning. You could even do this with a little origami frog and have a video. And we want students to understand through partitioning that 4/3 is equivalent to 1 1/3 without teaching them that algorithm of multiply and then add the numerator. We will have them discover that through this introductory lesson. Once students understand fractions greater than 1 on a number line, we can move into phase 2, investigate. This would work really well with breakout groups. Our district had Google Meets as our live sessions last year, and Google Meets did not have breakout groups. However, they have said in the fall that they will begin breakout groups. Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, Zoom, and even Microsoft Teams all have breakout group options. This is really important because we want student voice, and we want the students to delve into the activity, and we want them to explore concepts. Normally we would have it hands-on, but we can switch those tools to virtual manipulatives. Now I'm going to show examples through Google Slides, but there are many different collaborative platforms that you could use. So today, just speaking of frogs, we're continuing with our frog jumping. We are at the Washington County Fair, and there is a frog jumping contest. Now, I, as the teacher, can pre-plan some breakout groups. I also could hit random selection. Either way, I have planned to have 4 small groups. So I want to say, can you show where your frogs landed in more than one way? Group 1, Big Green Monster and Swamp Prince. So I'm hearing that my audio is breaking up. Is that true for everyone? Okay, hold on. Is this better? Is this better? No. I will try to speak louder. Yes, Susan, slower. Thank you, Stephanie. I will speak. Okay. Okay. I've toggled with it a little bit. Is anything better? Oh, no. Well, I am going to keep speaking, and it's likely going to record. So I will keep speaking and hope that I will keep speaking and hope it records. Okay. So hopefully it will record and you will be able to watch this at a later time if it doesn't. Okay, I am working hard to try to fix any audio. Okay. Oh boy. So group 3, group 2 is Lily Pad Lily. Hello? Okay, so I have just reset my microphone. Hopefully that will work. Yes, Zoom has been a little sketchy lately. Thank you so much for letting me know that you couldn't hear me. Oh, thank you. So group 2 will be focused on Lily Pad Lily, who first lands at 1 3/8 feet. Next, she jumps and lands at 2 feet. Now this group has to explain which jump was longer. Group 3 will be working with Magnificent Mike and Marvelous Maxine. And group 4 will work with Bouncing Betty. And her first leap was 25 12 feet. So they're going to try to mark this. Notice down below, I have linked all the virtual manipulatives that the students might need to solve this problem. Students are all going to be working collaboratively on the interactive slides. I'm going to be able to see them, whether it's Google Slides or maybe you're in Microsoft OneNote. I'm going to be watching their physical work, but also through my platform, I'm going to be able to bounce between each group and scaffold and answer any questions or challenge students with questions. So here's a little example of what I'll be seeing while the students are working. So here's group 1. I can see they've chosen a number line, group 2, group 3, and here's group 4 working. This is what I'm seeing as the students are collaborating. Now, when they solve the problem, that's actually not where it ends, it's where the math begins. So we want to take an interactive gallery walk. What are the students doing and what are the teachers doing? This is extremely important that we come back together after problem solving. So the students are going to scroll through and they're going to look at their classmates' work. They can comment, question, they can leave an emoji, a sticker, or they can use the chat box like we're doing today. Either way, we want student-to-student discourse. The teachers are examining the representations in order to decide which groups should share and in what order. We're also developing questions to pose. Here is a template that we use at George Mason, developed by Teresa Wills, and it's called the Interactive Gallery Walk. Now, obviously, I've taught my class how to do this. We've gone through each of these components step by step. So we will flash this slide and the students know it's time to go explore other students' work. And we can do that through the comments, emojis, we can use stickers, we can write, or we can use the chat box. So here's an example of a comment feature. And that student asked a question, why did you decide to use fraction strips and not the number line? Here's an example of a student that went through and left a little emoji and said, I like your number line, I can see how the frog jumped. So we're interacting in some way right now through the gallery walk. Teachers are focused on these in-depth questions so that we're not just focused on the answer, we're focused on the thinking. So who has another solution, who agrees, who disagrees? And of course, at this time, you want the groups to be sharing and you want to moderate. When does this work? Where did you start? Why does this work? So looking at these frog jumps, how many solutions do you think are possible? All of these questions are how we're going to engage in discussion. At the heart of M-cubed units are what we call talk moves. And so even though we're online, I still want to ask students, do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? And they might be agreeing or disagreeing through the chat box, but we still need to ask those questions. I also want students to repeat and rephrase to check in for understanding. And again, I can do that through the chat box or students can turn their mics on, but these questions are still very important even though we're in an online environment. After phase 2, we move into phase 3, which is called communicate. Now, this is usually where students are writing in their journal. This is a great time for some asynchronous work. So students are going to reflect upon the mathematical concepts that they've just explored. We've explored it whole group, we've explored it small group, and then we have come back together after that small group to analyze everybody's strategies. So now it's time for them to reflect independently using the Think Deeply problems, which come with the series. Now, I know that I'm required to have office hours, so I thought this would be a great time for students to check in because the Think Deeply questions are often multi-layered, complex, and very thought-provoking. Because they are so complex, we do provide hint cards. So I can hyperlink those to add an additional layer of support for students who are working asynchronously. So here's an example of the Think Deeply that follows our frolicking frogs. So which frog had the longest first jump? Explain your answer. And I again want to make sure that students are showing their thinking in more than one way, multiple representations. So if you are live in a hybrid situation, maybe you have them work with their concrete manipulatives, technology, a virtual manipulative, maybe they draw a picture, and abstract are those algorithms. So a lot of gifted students move right into abstract, and that's wonderful, they can just see it, but we also want them to dive deeper into the mathematics and show that they can solve it in multiple ways. So this slide is a good reminder that we want students to use multiple representations. And here's a blank template where the students can show their work. They can show 1 way, 2 way, 3 ways, or 4 ways. Now, because the students are working asynchronously, I want to give them some tools. So here are all the virtual links that they could use if they would like to solve this problem. I also want the students to explain their thinking in writing. And we have a wonderful rubric that comes with M Cubed, where we're looking at mathematical thinking, reasoning, and vocabulary. So I want students to explain how they know which frog jumped the furthest. Now, the hint cards can provide support. We can use these in the classroom, but we can also use them in a virtual environment by simply hyperlinking them. So if I'm sending out an asynchronous Think Deeply, I want to provide the tools, all the manipulatives the students can use. I want to remind them of the multiple ways to show their thinking, and I want to hyperlink hint cards, which can provide support in addition to them meeting with me during my office hours. So these are just hyperlinked to a separate Google slide deck that I just put, and here's hint card 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they're just linking to a separate one, so students can have access to all 4. And again, it's their choice whether they use them or not. And phase 4, think beyond problems. These are my favorite. This is where the students really dive deep into a mathematical concept. Instead of spending a lot of time looking for a great problem, they're all right here. They're amazing, rich tasks. So this can be continued asynchronous work, and students, again, can check in during office hours. And because there are 4 Think Beyond cards, we have some student choice. Here's what the Think Beyond card looks like for our frolicking frogs. So twain means 2, and a twain was used on the river to signify a depth of 2 fathoms. And when you mark the twain, you're at 2 fathoms. So that's where Samuel Longhorn Clemens got his pen name, Mark Twain. And so a lot of kids find that really interesting. And then it goes into, can you find how many fathoms are a 1/4 fathom less than a twain? Oh, it's just great mathematical thinking. And this will take students in, allows them to solve a problem in any way they want, and allows them to really explore fractions greater than 1 in depth. Because there are 4 Think Beyond cards, we can also hyperlink all 4 of those here. Creating is a big part of gifted education, and asking students to pose their own problem is a wonderful way to differentiate and a wonderful way for students to really experience the joy of mathematics. So after every lesson in the M Cubed units, the authors have made sure to make problem posing a priority. So at the end of every lesson, you'll see an opportunity for students to create. And in this instance, we ask students to create a frisky frog leap situation for a friend, and then they can switch it, or they could possibly present it to the class next time we meet together. So problem posing is very important for gifted students. Another option, if students don't, if you want to add another choice, students can work on a Think Beyond, or they can pose their own problem. So that's another option. And again, those are all hyperlinked to just a separate slide deck that I've real quickly created. And all the Think Beyond cards are also in your digital teacher edition. I'm now going to show you a little bit about the interactive activities. The interactive activities are designed for you as the teacher to demonstrate that skill that we were talking about. So they follow the same procedures and the same phases as the book. So our first interactive activity, I'm going to show you from Awesome Algebra, and it starts off at Initiate, just like our lessons would. So this is from Deep Sea Cafe, where students are exploring patterns and rules. So we have some square tiles and some fish that want to be seated at each one. This is a good opportunity for you as a teacher to share your screen in your Zoom session or whatever platform you use, and to ask some whole group questions and to start exploring this skill of finding patterns. Next, in the interactives, they go into phase 2, which is investigate. So you go a little bit deeper into the mathematical concept. So now Courtney has 23 square tiles and she wants to use them. So how can she arrange them to seat her fish? And then following the same pattern, we go into think beyond. So now Courtney wants to arrange her tables and she wants to find a rule so that she can stop counting. How can she figure out how many fish she can see at a table, depending on how many tiles she has? So with the interactives, you as the teacher would be doing the moving, but it's a great model and it's a great way to demonstrate and teach a skill. The next Think Beyond could be used as a student question, and you could break the students out into small groups. So which arrangement will allow Courtney to seat the most fish, and write your rule. From getting into shapes, we have Initiate with geometry, and this is called Triple Play with Shapes, where students are choosing cards, and you can demo this. You slide over a card, and the students are watching because you're sharing your screen. And the question is, of course, which one does not belong? So 3 of the shapes on this card belong together. Which one and why? So these are just great already made lessons that will help you teach the skills in these units. We also have games, so you can demo this, and we're looking for 3 of a kind. So as you are sharing your screen, you can be dragging over cards, and then when a student finds a 3 of a kind, they can raise their hand. I have developed some templates for you today where you can take these and you can put your own Think Beyond cards, you can put your own hint cards. So for the problem solving tool template, we always want students to have access. If they're working asynchronously, we want them to have access to some manipulatives. So whatever tool you need for that day, you can add it to this template. This is the Think Deeply template, and then you can just screenshot and grab and put in a Think Deeply card. Here is your hint card template that you can take away today. Again, you can grab it and add a hint card, hyperlink them so that the students have some support. Here is your template for Think Beyond. Those are our extension and enrichment problems. Here's your template for Create. Remember, at the end of every lesson, there's an opportunity for students to problem pose, for them to create their own problem. Now I'm going to show you a little bit about how we have tried to support you in distance learning. In each of the units, we have lined up all the Flourish interactives. Now you have to have a Flourish account to access these interactives. But for example, with Unraveling the Mystery of the Moly Stone, this is a place value unit, and here are all the different interactives, which again are a great way for you to initiate and teach this skill if you share your screen. Next, we have lined up all the virtual manipulatives that support this unit. So in exploring place value, you obviously will need a lot of base 10 blocks. So these are all free web-based manipulatives, and they're all hyperlinked for you right here. We have play money, dice, and some base 10 blocks. So if I click on this third option, it brings me to the virtual manipulative. And that will also help you aligning your problem solving tools for the students. So if we want them to problem solve asynchronously, we want to give them some tools to do that. So in each of the units, we have the interactives listed and then the free web-based manipulative that will help you teach that unit online. So this is one of my favorite units, the 10th Street Pet Sanctuary. It's understanding and using decimals. I love this unit because we usually teach decimals with pure algorithms and children really don't understand what they're doing or why they're moving the decimal point. So of course, one of the manipulatives we're gonna need for this unit are decimal grids. So here is your link right here to your decimal grids. And here they are. So I can use these for teaching and the students can use them when they are asynchronously problem solving. Here is the unit we were looking at today, Treasures from the Attic, and they have some interactives to help teach fractions. And then here are all the links that would help you teach and support virtually the fraction unit. So we have tangrams, pattern blocks, Cuisenaire rods, and we want to encourage students to solve these problems in multiple ways. In our algebra units, and these are the level 5-6 units are a little bit newer. They're wonderful if you haven't seen them. So we have some dynamic graph paper. You're going to need a ruler. So we have spinners for probability, coin flipping. So all of these will help support your implementation. So getting into shapes, geometry, we need a lot of manipulatives for geometry. Lots right here for you to use. And our proportional reasoning. So thank you. I'm really sorry that I had some tech difficulties. But I have saved some time for some question and answers, and I would be happy to answer some of your questions right now. Remember that this webinar was recorded, so you will get 2 links, one to the webinar and one to this presentation for all of your hyperlinks. If you'd like to schedule a 3-hour interactive virtual training, you can contact Barb Shoup at our Gifted and Talented Sales Coordinator. And here is a link for you to learn more about mentoring mathematical minds. Sorry, I was reading the chat box at the same time. And here is our sales team again. Are all levels associated with a grade group? That is a great question, Jillian. So if you look here, it says level 5-6. So it's really going to depend on where your students are. So it's perfectly appropriate for 5th and 6th graders. If your 6th graders are advanced, they might have already covered those concepts, but they are leveled for those age groups. And it also depends on your state. So for example, we have in the fractions, we have some fraction multiplication, and I'm in Virginia, and we really don't get into that until 6th grade. So it really depends on what your students know. A great piece of advice is to look at the beginning of each unit. At the beginning of each unit, it says helpful prior experiences. Helpful prior experiences, if you read that at the beginning of every unit, you will know if your students are ready for this or not. Yes, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, you have to really look at the standards and you have to look at the objectives of the unit. So I would say this is a suggestion, but there are many different ways that you can differentiate it. Especially with the hint cards and especially with the think beyond cards. So that differentiation is built in. Oh, you're welcome. A Flourish subscription is in addition to buying the M Cubed curriculum. Cannot be purchased independently. I'm wondering if one of the wonderful ladies on here with us today could answer that. I think Flourish comes with the books, but I think that they are going to answer that for you.
Yes, the Flourish does come with the books, and they would just need to contact their salesperson, and they can help them through that. Look up their account, see when they purchase. It's a 3-year license, so it depends on when they purchase the books, but their sales consultant can help them with that.
Okay, did that answer your question? Could we do the multiple hour virtual training together? I'm with a colleague from our district. So maybe Barb, could you answer that from Susan? She says, I'm on this session with a colleague from our district. Could we do the multiple hour virtual training together?
Oh yeah, so you could have up to 50 people to do the virtual training. And Shirley and I have done quite a few, haven't we, Shirley?
Yes.
And they're really great. We can take different units and we can go through them and use virtual manipulatives. So you actually get to use the virtual manipulatives as participants. So we kind of do it as a classroom, and each participant can use the virtual, we'll go through and do the different lessons. And then we'll use it, set it up like a classroom. So you would be using the interactive manipulatives. And we use a lot of, we use Google Docs for people to answer different things like that.
Thank you, Barb. Paula says we did a crosswalk for Pennsylvania math standards, and she can share those with other Pennsylvania folks. Thank you, Paula.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Yes, some units line up to different standards in different grade levels. So you just definitely want to take a look at the beginning of every unit. And again, I find that helpful tool of prior experiences. There's a big gray box where you can see what students should know before engaging with that unit. If we have purchased several N-cubed units from Kendall Hunts, do we have rights to retype questions in Google? That's a great question, Michelle.
And Michelle, I will get back to you on that. I believe you are fine doing that, but I just want to make sure, because we do have it all on Flourish, and I believe that is fine, but I will have to double check that. So if I don't, we'll go through and answer all your questions afterwards too, and send that out to people as well. We'll do a Q&A document as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Barb. So we'll do a Q&A document. And Michelle Anderson asked, how can you just share the slide to each group? The answer to that, Michelle, is that I don't. So let me flip back to show you. I do not just exclusively share the slide to each group. In fact, sometimes I have all the groups working on the same problem. Yes, they can kind of see what the other groups are doing, but they're so busy with their own thinking that they don't copy each other's work, because they're interested in creating an original document, an original problem. So let me go back to this slide and show you. So I have these on the Google slide, and all of them can see each other's work. So you have to think about that. If you want them all to work on the same problem. In this instance, I sampled all different problems, and it's not really an issue, because they're in their group, they're discussing, they're collaborating, they're talking, and they've all possibly picked a different manipulative to work with. So each group is collaborating on a slide, and we can all see it happening. And that hasn't really necessarily been an issue for me. Of course, it might be, but this is part of creating a community that you want to focus with your group You want your own thinking and your own problem solving. But in this instance, even though they can see each other group working, they all have different problems. Some are comparing fractions, some are adding fractions. They're all a different type of problem. And so they're gonna wanna pick a different tool to use, and they're gonna want to discuss it. So you can also push out the same problem for your groups, and that also produces an amazing conversation because each of your groups will solve it in a different way. So I hope that helped. I hope that helped explain, Michelle, a little bit. Yes. What do you recommend for the integration of these web-based manipulatives with your units? We use Canvas and Microsoft Teams. Can the students work directly on Flourish? Geraldine, I think the answer to that is that Flourish is really a tool for you as a teacher to demonstrate a skill. So that would be that phase 1 initiate. And as far as Canvas and Microsoft Teams, all of those manipulatives are free web-based manipulatives. So they're from the Math Learning Center or Didact's manipulatives. So it's just a link that I've hyperlinked in my presentation. So that will work in any platform you use as long as you're able to hyperlink it. That's a great question. Thank you. If our district, Sherry says, if our district already has M-Cubed, how can we get access to the online resources? Sherry, it is likely that you might already have Flourish. I know that my district had it, and somehow along the way, my director was just busy, and or I missed the email. So you might have it. What you can do is contact Barb, and she will let you know if you have that. And if your district does not have Flourish, I think that you can just contact Barb to purchase it. And yes, it does. It usually does come with your order. What is the cost of the 3-hour training? Michelle asked. Michelle, that's a great question. And I am going to put the slide with Barb's email up there, and you can contact her. Okay. And if you have specific questions like that, and if you put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, then we have your email address attached to that, and we can get back to you right away. Did they fix the issues with Google and Flourish? Stephanie asked. So Stephanie, again, that's a great question for one of the ladies, and I'm gonna put their email address back up there. Okay. And there are lots of shout outs to the Pennsylvania crosswalk. So whoever wanted to share that, that would be awesome. Susan wants a copy. Oh, and there is the email. There is the email address, hesterrl@svsd.net. She is willing to share the Pennsylvania crosswalk. Valerie says, I have 10 of your units. Can I purchase just the virtual counterparts? And Valerie, one of the ladies will be in touch with you to answer that question. The website for Flourish, Amy, is flourishkh.com, and it's right there. Melissa typed it in underneath. Did they place the bars and written the numbers on the slides? If so, is this hard? Did you type all this up? Michelle, I did create this presentation. If you want to clarify about where I placed the bars, I'm sorry, Michelle, if you clarify that, I'll be happy to answer. We are going to send out this presentation via Google. If you don't have a Google account, we are also going to send a PDF link. I tested it and the links were live. So for example, when you see this slide, you should be able to click on fraction number line, fraction bars, and fraction strips, and you should be immediately taken there. If for some reason they are not working, just let us know and we will be happy to send out another one. But when you click on your link for the presentation, it's going to force a copy so that we're all not sharing the same document. We want to click make a copy. You want to save it to your drive, and then you'll have this presentation. Okay, I'm still reading through the question. Sherry says, when will we be getting the emails with the webinar and presentation? I believe, Sherry, after we log off, that we will be sending those out right away. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Paula who was offering to share. Paula's email is pdon@philasd.org, and she is offering to share. And Barb, she said, Barb, can you share my email with folks? Yes. Wonderful. That seems to be, oh, kids put the fraction bars in written fractions. Is this an easy manipulative to use? Yes, Michelle. It's all of these manipulatives that I've linked. I use them in my math classes. So let me go to what you're talking about. All right. So down here, you just click on that. It takes you to a fraction number line, and it's extremely easy to use. And to actually write on it, all you do is you click the pen. So I like to allow my students a couple minutes to explore these online manipulatives before we get into problem solving, which is actually the same thing all of us would do as teachers in the classroom. We would pass out a new tool and let them explore before we ask them to start problem solving. So it's probably a good idea before you start a unit to send out a link with all the different tools that we're going to use. So if I'm starting the fraction unit, I had all those fraction tools connected to the slide, connected to the unit down below in the presentation. I could send those out and I would have the students just have some free exploration time so that they're familiar with the tools. Any specific tool I want them to use, I do take a few minutes to model so that they see exactly where the buttons are so that it saves time. So those are a couple ways that we can make sure our students are using those interactive tools. Yes, some excellent questions. Okay. Yes, Paula also says we are in this together. Absolutely. Just like you, I woke up on March 13th with a phone call at 5:45 a.m. that we were not going to school. I thought it was an extended spring break, that we would go back, and we never did. And unfortunately, I was in the DC area. I was never even allowed back in my classroom. And so having all of these tools on Flourish saved me because I didn't have access to my actual teacher manuals. And so I was able to still teach these units with fidelity and with the rigor, with the communication, still adding the writing piece, that really important metacognitive component for children. I was able to still do these digitally because I had that, because I had Flourish access. So that was a savior for me. Oh, Michelle is getting ready to develop the units for e-learning. Wonderful. Well, like Paula said, we are all in this together. This webinar was just a few ideas of how you can digitize this content. This webinar is just a few ideas of how to keep mathematics collaborative, how to keep student-to-student discourse alive, how to keep students diving deep. I know that when we first went virtual, I was looking for a lot of games or just different things that weren't necessarily what I wanted to teach, but I wasn't sure how it would work online. Problem solving online works wonderfully. You do have to develop it. You do have to stress multiple representations. If this is what you normally do in your classroom, your children will adapt with no problem whatsoever. Thinking about the groups, thinking about how to form your groups and why you want them. And one of the most important things for me as a teacher, whether it's in person or virtually, is looking at their representations. So after students solve the problem, this isn't a show and tell time. And I am guilty of that in my early teaching years. I would say, wow, look at all the different ways we solved this problem. But really my role as a teacher is to look at which representation do I want to start with. Perhaps there's a misconception with my class. Perhaps there is a lack of a core understanding going on. Maybe a couple of the groups solved it incorrectly. So I need to really be looking as the students are creating. I'm looking, I'm watching, I'm bouncing back and forth between the groups. And I'm really thinking, what group do I want to start with first and why? So when we come back together for that debriefing after the problem, I might say, Group 2, could you share your solution strategy, what you did and why? And then as Group 2 is explaining, I want to say, Group 1, could someone from Group 1 repeat or rephrase what Group 2 did and why? So I want to continue to use those talk moves, even though we are on a virtual environment. I want to ask these questions, these amazing questions, and I want to get the students talking to each other. We know that student-to-student discourse has the most impact on student learning, not teacher-to-student discourse. So all of these wonderful components of M³ can stay alive in a virtual environment. So I want to thank you all for attending today. It was wonderful to have you here. You asked such great questions. The links for both of these presentations will be coming your way as soon as we end this webinar. And good luck with your school year. Let's all try to stay in touch and support each other in the upcoming school year. You are welcome. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Working on this was motivating for me too, because I started it in the spring and I had to fiddle around with it a lot until I found some success. If you are interested in free PD on teaching virtually, George Mason University is really supporting teachers right now. Dr. Teresa Wills is offering free PD for teachers because we have had to learn this on our own. And so I've been lucky to have the support system of this university. So thank you so much. Please be in touch if you have any questions. I am going to put, Dr. Wills has a website and she has a YouTube. She has it all. She's been studying, teaching virtual math for over a decade. And so she was really prepared for this and she's dedicated to supporting teachers. So I'm happy to learn from her. So thank you all. Oh, you've watched it, Cheryl. She's watched a few with Teresa. Yeah, they're very helpful. So these are the strategies I shared with you today are some of the strategies we use in my graduate math classes, which are all virtual. And at first, it's a little different, but just like creating any community, the children really get used to it. And we can still have deep mathematical conversations and understanding. Well, thank you so much. It is 2 o'clock on the dot. I look forward to hearing from you in the future if you have any questions. Bye.